Okay,
We're up.
we're up. Okay. Well, we're here as commissioners and as clerk to talk about budget, and I'm just going to turn the time over to the clerk.
Okay, so I'm just going to start by saying that I appreciate the way that we have been doing budget the last few years. So just really quickly, in the past, and the way that it works in most counties still is departments will make a presentation to the clerk for the clerk's recommendation, and then the commissioners still want to know what's going on, and so the department will have to come back in and do some sort of a presentation to the commissioners also, and then the clerk's recommendation then goes to the commissioners. And we have worked hard to work together to save everybody a little bit of time so that everybody's all on the same page. So here we are. So Adam, if you want to go ahead and just start with your proposed budget and anything that you deem relevant. We'll just let you have the floor.
Okay, Adam McKinney, Chief Technical Officer, covering IT and 911. Do you guys have a preference on which budget we look at first? We can go numerical order. Okay, numerical order it is.
Page
16.
Okay, so the IT budget, in keeping in line with the requests to try and keep this budget as flat as possible, I did, but we did bring in a couple of other departments money that they had allocated for some of this stuff in the past. So I'm just going to go down through the line items one by one in the B budget section, and if you guys have questions, I have supporting documentation and the quotes that go with it. In my budget sheet, I had included a detail sheet that shows what those costs are, and I can go through each one of them if you want, or we can go through them as a group. So first and foremost, I did eliminate, last year I eliminated the 420 line, 420,000 line, and I had combined that into the 424 line. Again, this year I kept that same mantra. I kept the 422 line at 10,000. That's our county consumables budget. That's the one that goes for things like spare monitors, keyboards, mice, generally speaking, things that are used and used through during the year. I kept that at the same price. We've been using that. Last year we went up to about 85% on that. I think it's just a nice round even number for IT consumables and spare equipment. It works out pretty well. The operating supplies in 424, that ends up becoming stuff like paper, pens, toners, things like that. That's actually a decreased number from the last year around. I kept it at 1,000 this year. I said increases in C detail sheet, but I didn't actually have any increases in that budget. That was 1,000. The hostess and luncheons, we kept that at 150. We used that last year for an employee Christmas party, and I think that's probably what we'll use it again this year. Freight, again, same thing, kept it at $100. That's for shipping. That's not postal shipping. We didn't use very much of that last year. In fact, I don't think we used only about $20, but it's a nice round number in case we have, once in a while, we do have to ship things back to the depot for repair, so we kept that at 100. Then we get to 428. That's one that one actually did decrease a little bit. I moved some of that stuff around. I've been consolidating some of these. I had so many line items for some of these that I wanted to combine a couple of them. And that was one of them. The maintenance computer one is one that I combined. The reason I did that is because this is hardware maintenance on computer equipment. That one, most of our money that increased this year and going forward is in software increase. So I was able to decrease the hardware maintenance line. That one covers things like our UPS system, the Eaton power system that's in the basement of the other building that keeps our equipment running. Covers the maintenance on our air conditioning system in the switch room, things like that. That's hardware maintenance. So then you get to this line item number 42820, software support. Now this is the biggest increases that we had. And if you looked at my detail sheet, I've broken out exactly what these increases are, and there's a lot of them, unfortunately. Some of this stuff has gone up drastically since COVID. A lot of this stuff, we had almost a 2-year reprieve on budget increases on some of this stuff, and they're coming back around and kind of hitting us with some of these increases. The largest one, of course, is Tyler. That's our Eagle Munis software. That one increased by nearly 13,000 over last year. It's just a big jump. The Eagle Recorder, that one increased slightly. That's the clerk software. It's not as big a jump. The Exchange 365, that's Office. That one increased slightly, but not due to price changes. That one is actually due to the fact that we're adding new employees at such a rapid clip, we've got to buy more email addresses. And those cost a certain amount per year per employee. So that one went up slightly, not a whole lot, about $1,000. Novatime, that one increased just ever so slightly, only about $100 and some. That one we are looking at, it went up a little bit.
And that's also due to more users.
It is, more users.
More supervisors.
More supervisors. Yep, and that one, we also are in the process of getting an upgrade, which they've indicated to us will not cost money for the upgrade. However, that's generally how that works. So we'll get an upgrade, and then possibly next budget cycle, it may go up a little bit. I did budget also for Eagle View Pictometry Connect. That's something that GIS asked me if they wanted to budget for, but I'm just trying to keep those all in line in one chunk. So that one is actually budgeted in there. One that was not included in last year's budget that has come up this year is the Veeam Connect licenses. That one wasn't included last year, but it's included this year. Veeam is the on-site backup and recovery software. So we have 2 layers of backup and recovery. We have an online local backup and recovery that will allow us to restore files for people that lose their files, and then we have an off-site deep storage for disaster recovery. That one is up for a renewal. It's a 3-year deal. We just didn't include it last year because we were still within that window, so it's on there for this year. The other one is Datum Insights. That one was in last year's budget. That did not increase in price. And then CityWorks Maintenance, again, same thing. It was in last year's budget. That one did not increase. Oh, and one at the very top, both Sophos, EDR, MTR, which is our antivirus and threat detection and response. That software went up a little bit, about $2,500. That software is invaluable. That has saved our bacon multiple times. We have been alerted by those guys of things that they've captured in the network, and we've been able to stop data breach stuff from happening because of that. That software is absolutely invaluable, and it's also the same one that the state of Idaho uses on their network system too. And then Esri, that's the GIS software. My department has been covering that, even though GIS is the primary user of that equipment. That is going to go up about $3,000, and I've got quotes for all of that stuff. If you guys like to see it, I've got every individual quote is listed in there. Okay, that's software, and like I said, that is our largest increase. That one, and there's one other one down here a little lower, but we're going to be taking it out of another budget. But unfortunately, the software has just gone up in this last go round. We have pared it back. There is some that we've removed completely, like Microtel. With our new phone auditing stuff, we won't need that next year. So it's budgeted in here this year, but we will not need it next year. That's a nice one. And then, like I said, some of these are in year 1 or 2 of the contract, so there's just really no leeway to squeeze those. Okay. Next one up is office repair equipment. This one is very similar to that hardware maintenance line, the operating supplies line. I left those separate because we actually did have Mauer come out and service a few pieces of equipment this year. That's the budget that we used for those guys to actually come on site and do that, versus the other, which is like a preventative maintenance type budget. Then after that, postage, we left that one at 50. Again, we didn't use very much of it last year. I actually used the budget here to make some mailings that should have been included in a different budget, so I left that at 50 just to have some postage in there should we need it. I don't anticipate using a lot of it. Travel, I pared that one back by about $500. We didn't use it nearly as much as last year, so I sliced that one down. The same for education, brought that one down to $1,500. That includes the CBT nuggets. Oh, I skipped one too. We'll go back to it just a second. That one includes the CPT nuggets. That's the online training application. We've actually used that quite a bit. We've shared it with other departments as well. We just have one login for it, so it can only be used by one person at a time, but it's a countywide login, so we've shared that. And then the other one is I've still budgeted in here for Dorian's test on his step 4 on his final step to becoming a CCNA administrator. He's been working strenuously on that, but he's the only guy that does a lot of stuff in my office, so he's not quite there yet, but I did budget for that. to reimburse him when he takes that test. And the one I skipped up there, 42830, yeah, court security. I budgeted nothing in this budget this year. I've given that completely back to Captain Ballard. My department feels that court security and the camera equipment is really her purview. And I know she's planned a budget. We've asked her, and we've kind of worked with her to come up with an idea for a strategy on getting some of this camera equipment under warranty, under maintenance contracts. There's a large ask coming up on that equipment that is going to be, I mean, we're at the end of life on some of that hardware. And while IT completely will continue to maintain the servers and the backups and stuff, we feel that the court security, this money that was allocated almost every year, and I've decreased it every year, you see, I've gone from 5,000 to 4,000 to 2,000. We ended up using that. I don't really think it was being used for what it was intended for. Originally, that money was allocated to maintain the door controller doors and swipe access system. That system's been replaced. We no longer maintain that, and I just decreased that budget. Last year, we used some of that money to replace broken cameras and the intercom system and things like that. We've just given that whole thing over to court security. We'll cover any kind of emergency maintenance stuff out of that maintenance budget for IT spares, for IT-related stuff. For court security-related stuff, I've asked Ballard to please budget for that. And also, if we can do a contract with these companies on this equipment, we need to come up with some type of rolling replacement strategy, much like they do at the jail. We don't have that for the courthouse currently. And I think she's included that in her budget. We've discussed that, so.
I just looked.
Okay, excellent. Okay, next, the big one, this is an interesting one. So 47400, that is telephone. That is telephone service. That is actually US West's line fee. Now, I did ask we have completed the migration to this new telephone service. And this $22,000 will cover the phone and long distance for the entire county for the entire year. That said, I did ask the department heads, because I wasn't sure if we were going to be done with this by this year, to still include their line items for that in their budgets. I think most departments budgeted about $2,000 a year for their phone service. We are recognizing a considerable savings on this by moving to this new software, or this new process. That said, I did ask those departments to continue budgeting, just in case we have some leeway. Again, we weren't sure if we were going to be done by the time budgets came up. So you're going to see that people are still budgeting telephone service in their accounts, but I anticipate the vast majority of that money is going to go back into their budgets, and we will not need to include it next year. So.
Do you know when this is going to be done? Because we have until basically the end of July that we could take the monies out of the department budgets,
So
if we need to.
The transition is complete. We have had a little bit, as you know, of issues getting them to shut the old stuff off and stop billing us for it, but it should be done. I mean, we're mostly there. We had opened a ticket with them on last week to finalize that single PRI that they're still billing us on. And once that's gone, that should be it. We'll be on the single billing per month, which is standardized at this point.
So maybe we can relook at that in a month?
Yeah,
See if
absolutely.
we can take that out.
Yeah, you may be able to remove them
Yeah.
completely.
Okay.
I think we're very, very close. And
So this on the commissioner's report, we'll just get one billing and not in every
Yep.
department?
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we no longer need to bill back departments for their long distance usage, because we're now buying it much like a cell phone in one big package. We're just buying a chunk of minutes, and that's it. We're not needing, when we budgeted for, I believe, 10,000 minutes a month, but we don't even come close to using that at the courthouse. Different story at the sheriff's office. We're getting ready to do this same project for those guys over the next year. But again, that long distance service is the biggest cost savings on it. So the next thing is the telephone maintenance service. And again, this one went up because I was asked by the commission to take over telephone maintenance for the entire county. So basically, this increased by $11,000. That is the sheriff and jail's portion of that. So that will actually come out of their budget. They did not budget for that this year. We just moved that all into one. That service price is staying this year exactly the same price as last year. There was room in that contract for it to increase, but this year we're not increasing it. Next year I anticipate a 5% increase on it, but for this year it's exactly the same as it was. Last but not least, I take that back, two more. So 74700, That is the countywide internet and fiber ring maintenance. I also took that one over from all the other departments, so that budget increased a little bit. Basically, that includes our link to the fairgrounds, our link to the wellness center, the juvie, the Sterling building, the new Safe Teen Center, the maintenance on all those, and they're $1,000 per link. I absorbed all those into one, so we can only have one. That also includes the internet access for the county. Now, we are currently in talks with Direct Communications about the wellness center. Up to just recently, the wellness center has asked us to increase Wi-Fi capabilities and bandwidth options up there. We started putting gear in, and we found out that Direct Communications was only delivering us a 100 meg pipe. It limits the amount of speed that they have at the wellness complex. And we've started talking to them. There was kind of a deal struck with those guys when they put the gear in for Portland of Health Trust. The deal was that at the time Portland of Health Trust allowed DirectCom to host a piece of hardware there to provide internet access, that we basically were able to recoup that free internet connection up there. They've now gone back because we've asked for more internet, and they said, well, we can make, and we haven't finalized this yet, but we can make an additional modification, get it back under contract. The maintenance costs will stay the same at $1,000 per link, but we may start to see a monthly internet usage charge up there. Right now, we've asked them to upgrade to 500 megs. They're going to take the price of the 100 megs off the total price point, which was the original, because the county allows them to use that space in the rack and the power. We're paying for the power. They're going to take the price of the 100 meg link off of the 500 meg link and give us a proposal for that. I'm going to meet with them later this week. That money allocated, should that be, would be about $300 a month. It's in here. We've got it covered, but I would bring the proposal and a contract to the commission for signature, of course, before we.
Well, there's another fiber player in town too.
Yeah, there is. And another thing that you may or may not be aware of is that Direct Communications is now owned by Syringa. So something we just have started speaking with when I get to this budget about IRN, the Idaho Optical Regional Network. Syringa is the big player down here on that. Because of that, we may have some significant cost savings available to us once IRN is really in the game. So we'll talk about that when we get to the 911 budget. And then the last one here is contract labor. That's a misnomer. That really should not be called contract labor. That is the website costs. That has decreased significantly by adding Emma to the mix with maintaining that website. I dropped that one nearly $7,000. We used to budget $10,000, and that was primarily because we had an outside designer who would work on the site. But between Emma and I, we've been able to maintain that site. So the $3,000 is literally the raw cost of the hosting and the plugins that we use, the firewall on the website, the load balancer, that stuff. That one has decreased considerably.
Do you want to move that up to operating then? If you're not contracting work out,
It's not contracting.
then why don't we move that up to operating?
Yeah, we could absolutely do that.
We'll put that up
Absolutely.
in 424, 00.
Yeah, that would be perfect. That would work really well. And then the only capital outlay, so basically I'll just give you the overview on this. With the maintenance and telephone service considered, this is about a 7% increase over last year's budget. And about 3% of that is the software costs that they're just passed on to us. Unfortunately, we're not going to get much. Without the telephone maintenance, meaning that we took it from another budget and added it in, it's actually only about a 5% increase. So it's about 3% on software and 2% on everything else that we've combined, because we've taken those maintenance costs for the fiber ring. Yeah, well, I have one more.
Go ahead.
I do have a capital outlay request this year. It's not necessarily crucial. It's just something we'd like to do. Our core switching gear is now at end of life. It end of life this year. It's given us 14 plus years of service. It's still serviceable. We can still utilize it. It's no longer under maintenance contract. This $50,898 core switching upgrade would replace our primary core routing equipment and the core switch, not only here, but also at the sheriff's office. We did experience at the sheriff's office this year an outage where the core switch went out over a weekend. We were able to get it back up, and we do have spare hardware for it. However, again, it was purchased used by the previous director from a university here locally. It's simply not serviceable anymore. It's out of life. It's still running, but if we could, this $50,000 capital outlay request, and that quote was included in the budget, would replace that gear with modular equipment. That's another thing. Our current main fiber switch is one device. So if a piece of it dies, we can possibly replace it, but if the whole thing goes, we're gonna scramble because we don't have the capacity to replace the entire thing at once. This module, or this model would move us to, instead of one large device, it would be 4 redundant devices. It would be 2 that feed the switches, 1 that feeds the fiber ring, and a router. Those would all be redundant power supplies, redundant backups. So if anything went bad on it, we would just replace one piece. And that would be the sheriff's office as well. So that's the only capital outlay request. And I actually was pretty surprised at the price of that. It turned out that's very reasonably priced. And that includes 3 years of maintenance and the Cisco DNA, which is the monitoring software, something we've never used before, but it's pretty nice. And that would be 3 years. We'd own that hardware. We wouldn't have a maintenance charge on it for 3 years afterwards. So that is the IT budget. Have you guys got any questions?
Yeah, a budget.
Okay.
You can go through any increases, nothing?
None. I did not increase anyone's salary because of the large COLAs from last year. I have headroom in the network administrator, or the network management line. I think we changed its name. It's network admin now. There is headroom in there because Dorian has yet to finish his step 4. When he finishes step 4 of that CDP, he would increase to that. But other than that, I did not increase any of the salaries. And the employees understand. We just discussed that it's been a COLA year and we're going that way. So no increases up there.
Okay. And then the second question, in years past, we've gone where you were responsible for purchasing all computers, upgrades and stuff, and where the departments were. Where are we at now? Where are we at in that process?
So we are year 2 of our 5-year replacement plan. We did not replace any PC gear last year. This year, having replaced nearly 1/3 of all the systems in the county 2 years ago, I still feel we're in a pretty good spot. We asked departments that had immediate need, and there aren't very many of them. I was only approached by maybe 3 departments asked about immediate need on computers, because I don't want to budget for a large chunk of capital outlay for that until next year. We'll be in year 3 of our 5-year plan then. I want to do about 1/3 more. That would put that original 1/3 on the second tier, and this would replace the 1/3 that's the oldest, so they're about like 6-7 years at this point. So next year they would be 7 or 8 years. But I just told the department heads that had immediate needs, and they were primarily only the assessor's office, which I'm not certain I feel is an immediate need, but they had extra money that they had felt that they could allocate, and the planning and zoning department. They asked for quotes on just a few computers. I'm not talking about an entire office-wide switch out. It was just 4 or 5 machines. And then we did have some in juvie probation with that new Safe Teen Center, which they were able, I believe they included that as a grant stuff. So
But
that's kind of where
their
we're at.
budgets or your budget?
They'll be in their budgets
Okay,
this year.
that's what I wanted to
Yep,
clarify
yep,
right here.
yep. We are maintaining, IT we're just maintaining what was replaced 2 years ago. It's still fully serviceable, still fully under warranty. And then my plan is, that would be a capital request for next year, to do probably about another 1/4 to 1/3 of the machines. So again, we're probably talking 50 to 75,000 like we did last, or 2 seasons ago. So
Okay.
yep.
And if I missed it, did you talk about any retirements in your department?
So we brought that up once before. John, in my department, is eligible for retirement. He has originally told me he wanted to go when he turned 65 this year. He turned 65, and now he doesn't feel he wants to go until next year. He's waiting because he has a child on a mission, and he'd like to keep the insurance. So I did not plan for any retirements this year. It's looking like that will be April of next year, most likely. So
We can always throw that in the budget, and then if he decides to go early, you won't be we could be playing.
Yeah, I just knew we'd talked about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's another one with him being our law enforcement software person. You know, we did discuss with another person in my department about taking that position over. I'm really not certain at this point it's the best fit, so I have a feeling we're gonna need to hire for that position. But we've offered the coursework and classes. It's just that the person who we've offered him to, he's not certain if he wants to do it after looking at it. He kind of likes what he's doing now. So if he chooses to be trained, the option's there. If he doesn't, we may have to hire out for it. But that said, we saw overlap in that position in both the PPD and CPD agencies and at the sheriff's office for the day-to-day routine stuff. So it can be added as an additional. So anything else for the IT budgets?
Christie, I have a question for you. On this capital outlay request of 50,000, where does that come from?
Reserves.
Okay, thanks.
Anything that's gonna be capital, or property acquisitions, we'll fund from.
All right, thanks.
About the security systems with Captain Ballard, you'll still be involved in the making sure the technology
Yeah.
fits and all of that kind of stuff. It just seems like when you're involved, or your department's involved in
Absolutely.
those purchases, it's just gonna be funded out of her line.
It would be funded out of her line, and what I've really would like to do,
Well, court marshals, yes.
what I would love to do with that equipment is get some type of contract like they have at the jail. The jail, they have a 3-year rolling, they have 2 equipment, 2 servers. Every 3rd year, they replace one of those servers. They load balance the cameras between them, and they just simply plan. That's never happened here at the courthouse. And what happens is when that stuff goes down, my department is more than happy to jump in and help to fix it. The issue is that I just don't want us to be too far down the pipe on the hardware age. Sometimes that stuff gets put in and forgot about until it's broken. And I would like for us to have a plan in place where if that hardware were to go out, it's not going to be a rush for any department. We have some idea who's the service contract on it, and then we can get that stuff fixed. The other thing is, like I say, right now, we're not being redundant on that equipment. We can keep it running as long as possible, but I'd love to have some type that stuff's mission critical. So if we can rotate it and have a backup to it, that would make a lot of sense to me.
Well, there's 3 general questions. Have you talked to Christie? Have you talked to Adam? And have you talked to legal? You better have
Not
yeses.
necessarily in that order.
No,
It's
but
usually first.
you better have answers to those 3 questions.
Yeah, and my department is more than happy to continue keeping this equipment running and assist with Captain Ballard's stuff. We just feel that as court security, it made more sense to put that money in her budget, because it keeps it all in one spot. So.
Okay, great.
Yep. Okay, so now on to the 911 emergency communications budget. This one is very straightforward. Really did not add too much to this one at all. Let's see here. First and foremost, last year we did have a bit of, or this year I should say, we did have a bit of extra money in this account because we did submit for a grant to the IPSCC for the Equiture stuff. We budgeted for 1 Equiture replacement last year, but the IPSCC gave us a grant to replace all of that Equiture equipment. So that's been done. So we did have a little extra money in this budget, and it's really beneficial to us because in the 424 operating supply line, we ended up having quite a bit of stuff come up as they were doing these console upgrades, as they were putting this new gear in. Turned out that we had quite a bit of stuff that needed to be brought up to the right level. So for example, PPD's console upgrade project is finally complete, but we ran into things like our battery backup system was not sufficient, so we had to upgrade that. There wasn't enough wiring in the building, so we had to upgrade that. We had things like the routing equipment for the new counties that we've brought on. We brought Caribou County onto the network this year. We're working on Bingham County next year. Those were things that were not really planned for per se, but once we got to the point of being in the middle of the project, we had to have some of that gear. So it was really nice to have some of that extra money in the 424 line. And because of that, I did increase that line for next year. Our last year budget, we budgeted 5,000 and we used just about all of it. Actually, I think we used a little over it. I budgeted 10,000 in that budget line this year. That stuff goes for, again, consumable things that break. We're in year 4 of a 5-year replacement on the PCs. So that's stuff like if power supplies go out in the computers, the keyboards, amazingly enough, dispatch uses keyboards like crazy. They go through them pretty fast. The monitor equipment, that's stuff like that. It's consumable stuff that when we started on some of these projects, we found that we needed a few new bits here and there. So I did increase that line by $10,000 or by $6,000 over last year's budget, just because we had some of that stuff. And we had to contract with Razor Electric to pull a little bit of more cable. We bought some radio gear. We had bought a couple spare computers for the PSAP, so they have a spare sitting on site ready to go, so stuff like that. So that one did go up a little bit, just to keep those. And I do anticipate a couple big expenses this year, but they're folded in here. Number one, the fencing at a couple of our radio tower sites. The ICE did the fencing in, so I anticipate some fencing. That could be included in that budget. It's also included in the maintenance down here. Either one of those two budgets would cover that. And then, as you know, we have spoken with HR about the Sedgwick site. The ice at the Sedgwick site this year was such a problem that they determined that it possibly we may need to submit an insurance claim for some of the damages up there. When they flew up there, they had to take a helicopter to get up there. When they got there, the snow was so deep they were able to walk onto the top of the building without using a ladder. It's literally that. It was nuts. And the dish was out. They replaced that dish. We've covered the cost on that, but they indicated that some of the feed lines are bad. Some of the backup stuff is bad. So we're on a singular pole at this point up there. The generator is going to need some replacements. But again, we're now just barely able to get people back up there to look at it and assess that damage. As soon as we have an idea how much that is, I've alerted the ICRIMP so that they can be ready. We've got the paperwork, the documentation. As soon as we have an idea how excessive that damage is, then we can make a decision on whether or not we submit that for a force majeure type insurance claim. Let's see, next on there, those other 424 lines are just combined. I treat the PSAPs as a single entity, so I didn't separate those out. I did add back in $150 hostess and luncheon line this year. I had taken it out last year, but we do use that. We have visits from the statewide SWIC communicator from the IOEM. He's come out and visited a couple times. Sometimes it's nice to have that for networking. And in addition, we've had a lot of opportunities to work with Caribou, Bingham, and even Bear Lake is now starting to talk with us about wanting to connect to our system. So that's just a little bit of networking money in there. For travel and education, I did increase this travel one. Primarily, there's a couple of conferences that I haven't been to that I'd like to go to. The PSAP conference, that's the Public Safety Answering Point Conference. That one I'd never even realized it was available. I'd like to be able to attend that. The other one is the Radio Users Group in Boise. That one's changed to quarterly. I need to be going to that one. The last one is the Motorola Trunk Users Group. I included that one. The other thing is, now that I've been appointed to the IPSCC, I'll be going to those meetings as well. So I just increased that budget a little bit just to cover those additional travel. I did decrease, however, the education budget. I left $1,200 in there. That's the amount of money that we need to certify someone as a Spillman administrator, agency administrator, should we need to replace John. That's the price of that. Next, China Peak Power Service. That one we were given a notice that Idaho Power will increase that by 10%. So you see that 10% included in there. I did the same for Sedgwick and Egan. We did not get notice that that would be increased, but I just anticipate that this year, as everything else goes up, it included that same 10% increase in there as well, just because I anticipated going up.
So right there on your fuel budget.
Oh, I don't have a fuel budget. It's zero.
Yeah. So you guys using the vehicles comes out of the commissioners?
It'll come out of their travel.
I actually have not ever utilized the county vehicle. I just drive my own car, and I don't charge the county back for it.
So a lot of times, if you don't have a specific car
Yeah.
And what happens is, the same thing with the clerk, we charge it to travel.
Okay.
But if you have a car within your budget, then you have fuel.
Okay,
Same
okay.
thing with repairs and maintenance.
Well, I just-
Yeah.
I know your department uses them on a regular
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah, IT
There wasn't
does.
Anything there. so-
Yeah, absolutely. IT definitely uses the vehicles for getting around. When I go to these conferences and stuff, to be honest, I like to have my satellite radio. So, as a good steward of the state's money, I just pony up and do it myself, so I can listen to my talk radio. Next on there is the U.S. West line fee. This went up just slightly, about $2,000. That primarily went up because that is the new connections that we put in to Chubbuck. Chubbuck was on microwave only. They now have a backhaul of fiber back to our sheriff's office. So they're not on microwave primary, and that $2,000 increase is the amount of money that Syringa needs to cover that line. Cellular telephone, again, we eliminated those. They were into the sheriff's budget last year, but we eliminated them completely. In fact, it turned out that the detectives weren't using them, so we've just turned them all off. They're all gone. Worked out pretty well. Another increase on this is air. This is going to be line item number 42820. This is the software support upgrade. These are baked in year-over-year upgrades for Motorola. They're generally a 5% increase on the software. That includes our Vesta maintenance. That's the 911 call answering. We did include iSpy. This is new for this year. We included iSpy for the South County agencies, the EMS and law. We also included it for Chubbuck and their fire departments. The statewide radio network link did not increase. We kept that at 70,000. That one's actually gone down slightly, but we left it at 70 because they're one that sometimes we get, as we add radios to that, again, as we increase people, if we need to add radios, there's a subscription fee for those radios that get used to it. So Fire Vision, Intrado text to 911, those stayed the same this year. Our RadCare MUX maintenance, that is the radio MUX, which is a voice combiner. That one went up slightly, about $200, not too bad. And then this Flex Beam maintenance, the same as the Beam maintenance on this budget. This is the Flex, that's the Spillman Beam maintenance, so local backup. Once again, it's a 3-year renewal. It wasn't in last year because we're in year 3 of the renewal. And then Rapid SOS, that's it. Then we get down to, let's see, the Department of Lands fee. That one went up a little bit because we are now paying a pass-through fee on the Egan site for that. Same for the lease site. That one went up slightly because we're now paying rent on the Kinport site. The upside to that is that they are doing massive upgrades to that site. That site was in dire shape, and it's going to get power upgrades, generator upgrades that we are not having to pay. They're part of our contract. We got a 20-year deal on that too, so that one is in good shape. The last, 494, the lease, I'm not sure why this says copier lease on it. This lease payment has been used to pay for that. We're in third payment of 5 on the PPD console. That's a 0% lease. I decreased that by $5,000 because the lease payment's $139 and we've been budgeting $150, and so I just decreased that to put that in another. We just don't need quite as much. Then we get down to 50100. That is the Motorola maintenance. That is the Motorola. This is the big one. And this year we actually were given not a 5% increase on the Spillman. We were actually given a 7% increase. But we did not get one for the last 2 years. So these maintenance increases on the radio maintenance, the Spillman, and the flex maintenance for the ambulance district, which is one that we covered, those did go up 7%. So you'll see that reflected in there. That's the largest jump in the group. And unfortunately, it's one of those ones like once you're locked in with Motorola, they kind of have you. You can't really get out of these upgrades and increases. 7% this year. They did tell us that'll go back to 5% next year. They're playing catch up from COVID, is what we were told. And then the other one is the maintenance, the generator maintenance. That covers the generators at our tower sites. And then the next one is the general maintenance line. This is hardware maintenance. I left that again at 75,000 because I do anticipate having to redo the fences at Chinese Peak. We're gonna have to possibly redo the fences at Sedgwick. The fences currently they're not commercial grade fences. They were done with like basically Home Depot type style fences. I've got quotes to do them with commercial fencing, and it's actually considerably cheaper than what we paid last time around. And then we'll have a guarantee on that equipment, so that those fences should stay.
How much?
So I left that at 75. What's that?
How much were the quotes?
I believe for Chinese Peak we're about 21,000, and that right now we only have. If you were to go up there and look, we only have chain link fencing that covers 1 1/2 of one side, and the rest, in order to not cover the chain link fencing, ices up and collapses. So in lieu of that, what they've replaced that with is livestock fencing. So for 3 sides, almost 2 1/2 sides of our fencing up there, it's barbed wire that's a foot apart. It's not going to keep anybody out of anything. And that Chinese Peak site is our primary radio site. It's site number 1 on the statewide system. We're investing a huge amount of money to upgrade the microwave gear up there, and I'd like to lock the fences again up there. So we're looking at about 21,000 is going to replace all 4 sides of that with commercial grade fencing. It'll have razor wire on the top of it, and we've been told the snow and ice will not collapse those fences. They looked at it when we had gone up there and said, this is like the contractor had gone out and just bought the stuff off the shelf and put it up. It just couldn't stand through those winters up there.
What's the other 50,000 for?
Primarily hardware stuff. So you're looking at generator stuff. We've got a generator that's going to be out up there at Sedgwick. Again, that might be covered under our iCrimp if we're able to make a claim for it. If not, that'll be hardware maintenance primarily on that generator equipment. And in addition, as we're putting in all this new microwave gear, I fully anticipate, much like the PPD console stuff, we're gonna find things like batteries that need to be replaced. For example, last year we replaced Egan's batteries. That was about $12,000 worth of battery backup gear. I have a feeling when we go to put this new microwave stuff in, we're gonna anticipate some of those costs. They're gonna find stuff that's been up there for 10 plus years. As you know, our microwave system is going on 19 years old, so I simply anticipate there being hardware associated costs as they pull that old gear out and put new gear in. So. Then let's see, lastly on here, almost to the bottom, is the tower and land fees are in there. Again, those were a little bit increased over last year, not very much for the most part. It's due to that Kinport now being a pass-through on rent rather than a freebie. That was one that they were giving to us for free. And then the only capital outlay request I included on here is for switching upgrades at the PSAPs. The price of this would be 2 new switches for each of the 5 PSAPs. That would be, that would include Caribou. That would bring this equipment up to current standards. Right now, again, we're utilizing equipment that was basically purchased off the shelf, some of it used, put in place, none of it under warranty, none of it under hardware. We do have 2 devices in each center, so there is a backup there, but again, that backup is as old as the ongoing equipment, so in some cases we're talking 10, 12, 13 years old on some of that gear. So that 28,000 would be 10 brand new switches, would replace 2 at each of the existing PSAPs for us. And you know, with 911, that budget is about a 4.5%, 4.8% increase over last year, including that capital outlay. And the vast majority of that is simply in that software, Motorola software maintenance stuff. It's just cost of doing business with Motorola, unfortunately. But again, the Motorola software and Motorola gear that we have is what makes us desirable to these other counties. And we are well into becoming the hub for all these counties. IPSCC anticipates that the grant for Bingham County will get through this year. That will connect them. And then we are talking about Bear Lake within the next 2-year cycle. Then Oneida and Franklin are the only 2 counties left that will be out of the Digby that will connect to us, and we're just working on those ones. So we're hoping in a 5-year timeline that Bannock County is the only provider of 911 services for this end of the state, which will make us very desirable to the IPSCC as they would like regionalization, so.
And we have this is an enterprise fund, so we charge a 5% admin fee that goes back to the general fund to cover our office, treasurer's office, commission office, a little bit of admin money back on that, and then these are all through fees.
Yeah, these are collected cell phone fees. Another thing I know that IPSCC is working on, I have not heard yet where they're at, but they are trying to get in front of the governor a major increase to these fees. It would double the $1 fee, immediately giving the county double the revenue. And then the other is that the 25-cent fee that we currently collect that goes back to the state, they're going to make that a sliding scale up to another $1, which will enable the IPSCC to give grants out of a much larger amount as we move towards next gen 911. I will say this year
I
I
just
looked.
tell you that you're 20 minutes into somebody else's stuff.
Oh, am I really? Okay. Well, then I will wrap up, and I will say, we are not this year as a county going after any IPSCC funding from the grant funds. In discussing with the IPSCC, because of the large investment that we made of ARPA money, I don't feel that we need to ask for any more money this year. We're going to let some of the smaller counties recoup some of that money for their next gen stuff, because we're going to have a massive amount of revenue coming in once this stuff is all passed. So, are there any questions on 911?
No.
Nope. Okay. That's it
I don't
then.
have any.
Yeah.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry to go over.
Oh, you're all right. It's important stuff.
We weren't wrangling you in either.
Oh, well, I can fix that. Oh, no, you don't need Global Protect on the commission. Yeah, nope, you're good. You're on the inside network. Yep.
We'll make it work.
Yeah, you don't need to.
Come on up.
No, you don't need to be signed in on Global Protect because you're on an inside network. Yeah, yeah, you're good. You're on the inside. Yep.
Good. 27. All right.
Right.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
So, just quickly, in the past, just so that all departments know, we're just going to say it, that it used to be that the departments would come in and make a presentation to the clerk and then come in and do a presentation to the commissioners. And over the last few years, we've done this more and more together. And so we'll all have questions for you as we go through, but
Okay.
just go ahead and run through your budget and some of the highlights of things that you need to have happen this year.
Okay.
And then we'll question you on a couple of things, and so you can just go through through your line items there.
Okay. Just as a quick overview of everything, a lot of our solid costs are software related. We don't get, which IT takes care of our main Esri software, which he mentioned had gone up to $3,000 this year. That is a 3-year contract, so that price will hold for 3 years. We will probably get another increase at the end of that 3-year set, just as an expectation on that one, but that price will hold. I do also have a line item for the Connect Explorer, so we're redundant on that one. I believe in the past we have always taken care of that because we're the primary kind of overseers on that one. I don't expect he'll need that money. I do expect that to come from us. Overall, I have done my best to kind of work through, kind of bring some things down in B budget as much as I can, because I would very, very much like to do an increase for salaries this year. My people have worked very, very hard in this last year. They have been forced to learn new software, new programming skills, new system reports and everything else. It's just the amount of work that they've had to do has been incredible in this last year, and I think that they deserve to be compensated for the work that they have done. My only other increase that I'm looking for is going to be in education and travel. We did our best this last year to take advantage of free trainings as much as we could, including the CBD nuggets that Adam mentioned as a free online. We have one of the departments that got an account with that. We've been trying to take advantage of those free online trainings as much as possible. We have just hit a point where we need to pay for some formal trainings on a couple of areas, mostly in programming and report building for the CityWorks system.
Do you still get the trainings through Esri?
Yes.
The packets of however.
No, we used up all of our packet
Okay.
ones, so anything that we do for cost on Esri, we will have to pull out of the education budget
Okay.
directly, so. And that was part of the anticipation on that, which is part of why we were able to not do as much last year, is because we did have some of those credits still available. Just running through line by line, and I will try to make this as fast as possible, because I don't have a whole lot, so. As far as salaries go, I'm looking for a step increase for myself, Jess, who is the analyst 2, and Brianna, who is the analyst 1.
Steps or grades?
Grades, sorry, I'm
Okay.
looking at the wrong line.
Just
I had
one-
both. No,
just
you're
one
correct.
grade?
1 grade for everybody, plus a 5% COLA. My part-time technician, this year I'm only looking at a 5% COLA. Next year I may be looking at a step or a grade increase on that, but for right now, just 5% COLA on that one. The other one I was looking for is possibly being able to get some extra money. I'm looking at about $5 an hour to help pay for interns. I'm having a really hard time getting qualified interns to apply. The CPI rate that the university offers, I believe, is $12 an hour. I just can't get the people I need who even have base level skills. I need them to have one course under their belt for them to be an intern with me, and that's an intro to GIS course. And they're getting paid more with other departments in the university. So they're taking those ones instead of coming to us. I'm just having a really hard time. So a few extra dollars that I could help contribute towards some kind of CPI would be incredibly beneficial, I think. That's it for salary stuff. I said getting down to B budget stuff. Office supplies, we don't buy a whole lot, so I was able to decrease that one. Hostess, I bumped just a little bit. Most of that is we have a shared water system. Since we don't have drinking fountains in our building, we have a water bottle system, and that most of that goes into help paying for that. We cover part of it, planning covers part of it. So that's most of my hostess is paying for water in the building. The big one is the pictometry, which has been a little back and forth on this one. I was able to take down our share of it pretty substantially. Like I said, we do have the Connect Explorer license. That one did go up $1,000 from $2,000 to $3,000. I am expecting to cover that in my budget. I got verbal agreements from Pocatello, Chubbuck, and BTPO to help contribute towards the pictometry. I need to create formal MOUs. I actually have not received a formal bill yet to actually start working through that process, but they have agreed to contribute not only this year but also for next fiscal year as well.
Can you email me those amounts? I need to
Yes.
include that as revenue.
Okay.
If you could email me those.
I only got confirmation on them just a little bit ago, so I.
No, you're good. I'm just, when you can, because then I can
Okay.
offset, because you'll pay the entire bill. And
And then we
then,
can go through.
and
Yeah.
then the revenue will offset that. So I just need to make sure it shows that we're not taking more property tax dollars to cover.
Gotcha.
That it's coming from an outside source.
Okay. Perfect. Do you need that for the departments as well, for their contributions, or just for the outsides?
You know what, if you'll email me what the departments are gonna pay into, we can make sure they put it in their budget request.
Okay, they should
So that
have,
you're not
but.
short.
That
Just in
works.
case.
Nope, that works. I can do that. So that was probably one of the biggest ones, because instead of budgeting for the entirety of that one, I only have basically my share and a little bit of a bump, just in case somebody can't cover something, I can still make sure that that bill gets paid. Repairs is mostly for our big plotter and our printer. That budget has never even come close to being touched for what's been budgeted for in the past. So I took that one down quite a bit. And most of that's ink. It's just toner, because big machines have big ink and they're very expensive that way. So travel I increased for education to be able to get people out to do some stuff. The education, I am asking for a little bit, but I am hoping to be able to roll over some from last year. We did take advantage of as many free trainings as we could, so we didn't go through quite as much of our education budget as I thought we were going to.
So when you say rollover,
The-
pre-buy things, or
And I'm not sure how that process works. Is it?
if
do
you
I-
want to use this year's money next year, you have to budget the use of it. So if you're not going to use, say, $2,000
Yeah.
this year, then that request needs to be added to next year's request
Okay,
in order to be able to spend it, because this is budget authority.
okay,
So if you only asked for 5, but you thought you were needing 7, you've only got 5.
gotcha.
So we can talk about that also,
Yes. Okay.
maybe after
After,
these meetings.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I thought I had set that one up correctly, so I apologize if I didn't do that right.
No, that's
It's all-
fine.
It's all
That's
good.
fine.
This is why we do the meetings.
Yep. The license certifications, which also means I did this one wrong, so I apologize as well. This is one where Jess is working towards her GISP, which is the GIS Professional Certification. We thought we were gonna get it done this year. She doesn't quite have everything she needs, so we're gonna push that one back one more year. And then after that, that will drop down to just maintenance fees on that one, so. Fuel, we don't have a car, so that's not too big of a deal there. Building repairs, we don't have anymore. In fact, that line item probably can be removed as far as I can tell. I'm not sure how that works when you no longer have that as a thing, because that's been taken over by facilities. Telephone was going back to what Adam was talking about. Cell phone, I would like to bump a bit. I would like to be able to get Jess a cell phone. She deals with the field crews that are out in the field trying to get stuff done. And if they had a direct line they could contact her directly with questions when they're having problems getting stuff to work, it would be more convenient than having to try to go through the office and play phone tag in the office. So that was one of my increases. Heat's not a thing anymore. We don't do property acquisitions. We've done reuse the COVID thing. We had a budget at one point in time for contract labor. I have never, I don't see a need for it, so I took that one out. I think the only thing I've got in here is, and I wasn't sure where the best place to put it in. I think I have it under office supplies, computer supplies right now. But maybe better under capital, I'm not certain. My machine is to be upgraded this year. This will be year 3. And then to keep with the 5-year cycle, so we did 1, 2, and 3. We'll skip the next 2 years and then do a 1, 2, 3, skip 2 years to do our machine upgrades that way. So, and we do actually budget for that ourselves because our machines are a little higher power than the standard ones that IT does. So we have to get some specifics from them on that one, but 2,000 seems to be about.
And that's a
where we're at.
discussion that we had, was
Yeah.
the department's
Yes.
budget for their computers.
Yeah, and the only reason for us is it to be as high as it is because we do have to have some specialty stuff that video cards and processors need to be a little higher end than what the standard person would need for their office. So that is mine in a nutshell.
Okay.
Questions?
All right, easy peasy. We'll get together with you and talk about some of those issues with rollover items and what we need to do with that. And
Yeah.
what's
Just
a need
Yeah.
versus want, and see what we can budget in.
okay.
Okay, we'll get together with you. No
Okay.
big deal.
And I apologize for not getting those right.
No, it's
good.
not a problem.
So
Not a
did
problem.
you figure your increase or your percentage? Looks like. Was it a decrease?
Overall, she has a
5,800 increase from last year.
Yes.
From last year? Okay.
And most of that is salary. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Anything else?
Nope.
That's all for me.
Okay.
Appreciate
Good
it.
job.
All right.
Thanks, Heather.
Yeah, mine's easy compared to a lot of other people, so.
Yeah, like this guy coming in.
Thank you very
Oh.
much.
Thank you.
He's here already. 63.
How come this one's red with an asterisk?
because it's Scott. Because he has multiple departments.
Well,
No.
I just copied what Katie had. So this was what she created and everything, so I just changed the page numbers and everything. But it's because he has a trust.
He's so
so he
special.
got rid of it, so. It should color coordinate with the trust down on the right-hand side.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Do you guys need to take a break or anything? You guys ready to rock and roll?
We just started at 10.
Oh, okay.
We're just rolling.
Let's roll. Hey, Scott Crowther, Business Manager, Event Director.
Jane Crump, Operations Manager.
Tony Coulter, Events Manager.
All right, we're excited to go through this budget with you guys. Good times. One thing I try to do is just try to come in the same footprint that I had last year. My goal when I'm prepping the budget is really to look at any money that I can save throughout the year by being fiscally responsible to try to take care of some of the needs that occur during the year. That's not always possible because at times we do have some pretty big things that happen. But usually, and this is just the way that I like to do it, I don't ask for any change in in our salaries because I just leave that to you guys. I know that you guys have a lot of people asking for money, and I just figure that whatever increase the county is willing to give the employees that we would support. And so I didn't ask for anything or make any modifications in my A budget for this year. And again, this A budget is the one I'm going over is the event side. So I have the two different budgets, the event center side and then the Bannock County events side.
So we'll start with your event center.
Yeah, my event. The event center side, right,
Yes.
Christy? Okay.
Yes.
So as we go down into the B budget, really we come pretty close on our office supplies early on, and with the cost of the office goods going up, I think that I left that about 2,000. We spend through that pretty quick in the year. You can see from past years we've been kind of right where we need to be. One of the increased costs has just been a lot of the marketing and the materials that we've used for concerts, the suites, all that kind of stuff. We're just using some of the office supplies we have on hand here. We don't necessarily have that in that other side of the budget. We don't have that built in, but we are using some of the, obviously we use the printer and the laminator and that kind of stuff to make some of those.
Probably too hard to pull out separate, so.
Yeah. So, but again, we just want to watch that because for the last couple of years we've come in just below the budget. So, our office equipment line, this is one of those things that we definitely could be buying some office chairs. We spent a little bit last year, but haven't done a lot this year. We did some remodels this year, but we did not take anything out of that. So, you'll see on the operational supplies and our operating supplies, our budget was $15,000. I'm requesting to increase that by $2,500, and that's just because we tend to spend a little bit more on our operational supplies line. The one from last year, that is the reason that was so blown last year was because of the porta potty issue from the year before where they didn't bill us for a year, and then they billed us and it all came out of our operational supplies for last year. So it kind of blew that budget out of the water. But like I said, anything that I have in my, if I've added an increase, I've reflected a decrease somewhere else down the line. So really the next thing that we go to is our travel and education line. We have about $3,500 for travel in there. We threw into the Bannock County event side, a training and a travel budget in there. Most of the travel that we do specifically related to concerts will come out of that line. And so we haven't used this. There's not a lot of shows that we go to or a lot of things that we go to for the Parks and Rec side. We do on occasion travel to another area to look at what they're doing. I think a couple years ago they went to Davis County. I know if we look at trying to find ways to rearrange our equestrian stuff in the future, I've been told that there's a really nice setup in Heber to take a look at, but there's a few things like that. So that's why I kept that at about $1,500, which is probably the equivalent to driving somewhere, staying in a hotel, coming back. So something along those lines. The education, last year, you guys put in a chunk for our CDL training. In the meantime, we found a much cheaper avenue to go through to get that done. And so that's why there's a reduction reflected there. It still is, I think, 4 people we plan to use. It was around $1,000 a person. So, is that what I have it at, 4,000?
5,000.
5,000.
So you have 2 people.
Okay. So, but we still do need to try to get our guys through CDL training. We had a person set up, they got injured, couldn't go this year. So, and then we got busy, so we just can't afford to have somebody gone right now. So probably in the fall, we'll try to send somebody again. So that means that the rest of that budget will not be utilized for the year. The vehicle repairs, I know our budget for this year for vehicle repairs is out of this world. Do you know what the current vehicle repair line is at?
I don't know. $23,800. So
Okay.
just a little bit over.
Yeah. So for the years previous, we came in under budget. Really, the majority of the repairs this year have been on water trucks. It's been on just keeping that vehicle moving going forward. 2 years ago, we replaced the skid steer, which had been a lot of mechanical issues for us. Last year, replaced the backhoe and 2 side-by-sides, again, eliminating a ton of routine maintenance that had been done on the, or not routine, but like maintenance and carrying those vehicles forward. Really, our big maintenance issues at this point in time is our water truck. So, and at some point, I guess we could have a discussion about equipment. I'm not sure if you guys want me to go through this all the way, and then we could talk about that stuff. Or,
Yeah, do you have any of that in capital?
no, I don't have any of that in the
Okay,
capital.
We can talk about it as we get to there.
Okay. From there, I just kept everything the same. Our maintenance budgets, our maintenance budgets, if we have kind of a mellow winter and we don't have a lot of damage, our maintenance budgets, we can come through with with a little bit of savings in our maintenance budgets. But we've never really, to this point, we haven't really started stepping forward to start doing big repairs with our maintenance budget, like if we want to undertake something with the grandstand, just a step at a time, that maintenance budget, repairing some of the upper horse stalls. We did a little bit of that this year before high school rodeo, but nothing too crazy. But the first year I came on, we had that big sprinkler issue up on the upper field. It cost a lot of money. So until we get our sprinklers up and running, I tend to be just a little bit nervous about spending that money. And so I sit on it for a minute, and then as the year goes on, I tend to release and let my guys do a little bit more with that. But then time does become kind of an issue for us. This year, with the sewer project, the sprinklers on the wellness side have been really hit and miss. They cut a couple of big main lines. Everything we've done on that side has been hand watering. We've been lucky that the weather has been actually pretty cool for us this year. On the Bannock side, the booster pump we've got a problem with the booster pump, but it watered for the first little bit of the year, and now it's slowed down. So it only pushes about 40 pounds through that line. So when you run 5 lines, and then we end up sucking in a lot of air. So, but that should be replaced here soon. Hopefully not a major expense, but like I said, once we kind of get the sprinklers doing what they're supposed to be doing, then I tend to relax a little bit on that. So, do you have questions or concerns on that stuff? All right.
We always do, but no.
Right.
Yeah. So then we go down to, and I'll just say that like our electricity, our water, those types of usages, typically that is in relation to how much the facility is being utilized. So again, if our RV park's full, then our electric bill is gonna be higher. Our water's gonna be higher, you know, so, but there should be something, to show the increase tick and that stuff.
We might want to take your power up a little bit. Idaho Power's going to do a 10% increase.
Yeah,
So we probably want to take that up and then also maybe trend out usage.
okay,
So that might actually get adjusted a little bit in the park's recommendation.
okay. On the lease equipment, I did hear today that our leased, like our tractors are gonna go up by at least 10% next year. So. All right. Let's see, so there was an increase. I think I just bumped up the heating because that's what we've been above our heat average too. So I think we just have to look at those two. Part of that is that we rent, be building out a lot more during the winter now. I mean, it gets rented out quite a bit. And I think both the RV parks, we keep water in those things all year long, so we have to run the heaters in the bathrooms all year long.
So
So
look at those.
even though we winterize the rest of the park. And then we can talk about professional services, the temp workers. In the past, we've used the female inmates, and they do a great job. I'm sure you've heard from other divisions, they have increased their rates. And when I calculated it out, it was more than I pay some of my full-time staff members per person. And I did not necessarily feel that the value equates to the cost. So we looked at, again, reducing the number of hours, and I sent in a request to say, hey, can we get them maybe 2 days a week? But they didn't come back with any sort of change on that. So that is, I guess, available. I do have a place I would like to use it, but that is available. One of the areas that we had talked about for a few years is a security position, having a security manager. I don't personally like to talk about all the vandalizing and the damage that occurs up at our facility. It does occur. This year we've had a couple of break-ins into our concession stands. We had an employee over there one day, and some kids broke in while the employee was standing there. And so we ended up catching those guys. We caught the first group as well. There's, as long as I've been there, there's been complaints about, everything from people speeding and breaking bathroom windows, or all those things. We just try to take care of it the day we get on and not let it take hold. But there's a lot that's going on. With us doing the concerts, we do have a need. There is a need for a security person to be the security manager, and so it really is a dual role. I feel like they could be utilized to help lock up the parks. My concern with locking the parks with just a regular staff member is, like, we're kicking some crazy people out of the parks. And I can tell you from personal experience, at 2 o'clock in the morning when I'm leaving after locking up from a concert, there are a lot of sketchy folks still in the park that I kick out. It gets a little bit, and you guys all know me, you guys know my background. It gets a little bit crazy. I couldn't imagine asking just one of my staff members, you go do that same job. It's really got to be somebody that and again, one of my criteria would be retired law enforcement is what I'd be looking for in that position. So
along that line, right now, you've utilized this for cleanup, for different things.
Mhm.
So who will be doing those, and how are we gonna fund that?
So the way I viewed it is the first year I went up there, we didn't have the female inmates. You remember it was pretty crazy. We're coming out of COVID, all that kind of stuff. So when we did get them back, we used them for special projects. So we'd say, go down, clean us up, do whatever. this year, for a lot of those special projects, like trying to clean up and it is a lot to stay on the front end of it, right, to stay on the front end of it, but we've used community service. We've been contacted by a juvenile probation department that they want to send up a couple of staff members to go and do some work for us. Again, volunteer work for free. And then some of the stuff is just done by our guys. We just have them go do the projects. And so that is one of the ways that we do that. The first year we hired temp employees to do it because that professional services line kind of floated both ways. So we hired a temp agency to do it. We had no consistency. They didn't like doing the work. So that's why one of the reasons we kind of moved to have full-time staff members that did that stuff. We do have temporary staffing in this budget as well, and with the number of event staff members that we've hired, we've actually utilized some of our event staff members to help out with events on the wellness side and events on as far as concerts. So we use them to do both events. And I know that's going to be a little bit of a tracking nightmare, but we're trying to keep track of that.
So this would be a full-time position,
The security, yes.
a new full-time position.
Yeah. And I would want to just line it up with the, no, not the coordinator, the manager position. So we have security level 1, security level 2. The security level 2 is for our police officers. It's roughly $25 an hour for our supervisors. And so if we looked at like our event coordinator position, yeah, that's the one you're talking about. That's the one that closest matches that range. And I feel like that's probably in this region, we'd probably get somebody that's retired to come do it for that. So.
Would you want to put them in some sort of a law enforcement type vehicle so that they look the part?
So we have the Durango that does look the part. I have rolled up on some homeless folks in that vehicle, and it works pretty well. The one thing we could look to do is throw on some amber colored lights or something like that. But I want to, and I know, so this is part of maybe a longer term plan, but eventually we've got to go through and we've got to write some ordinances that are specific to that complex as well. Dogs off leash, that kind of stuff. We write some ordinances, we mark those ordinances, and then you have a person that could actually cite people for them. Not with the purpose of generating revenue, but simply as the purpose of enforcing rules.
Right. There's that group that's always down at the lower end of the parking lot, cause it every night.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of stuff that I think we could, and I'll tell you, like, it's crazy stuff that I've seen since I've been up there, and you guys all know. Some days I think, man, why did I not bring a gun today? So whatever this position would be, we would want to make sure that we work with the sheriff's office to make sure that there's a level of training and proficiency, and then they would hold that security supervisor role for all of our concerts as well.
Okay.
So you don't have any money in your lease vehicle?
I thought I just rolled it over the same as it was before. So it wasn't the leased vehicle, we just had leases. I thought we just did leased equipment.
Okay. Well,
So it's just the leased equipment. The leased equipment is
Okay.
is every lease that we have, right?
So we probably should throw your enterprise up into the vehicle line?
Just separate the two?
Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
Just for consistent? Or you had mentioned possibly talking about trying to buy out vehicles as opposed
yeah.
to leases
I-
due to the usage?
Yeah, I personally, I have worked places where leased vehicles make just a ton of sense. Where we're at right now, in our truck, I think we might have just hit 7,000 or 8,000 miles. We've had it for 4 years. Right. Our tractors that we use, the tractors are tractors are expensive, but we lease those tractors. I can tell you, I think that combined, we're looking at about $20-something thousand of that 30,000. So it's $2,500, $2,600 a month in the tractor leasing. And so there's on a surplus government site, there's a tractor that could eliminate one of those leases for $25,000. You know, that's how much they're asking for it. Now, granted, it's not the, it would 100% fit with our system, but we haven't run through it to see if, to vet it out. I'm just saying that looking at options for it. And then ultimately, you know, we have leased an undersized tractor for some of the facility needs. We don't have a tractor that can groom the big racetrack. We've leased that, or we've had Pocatello Downs do that. But as we start looking at more ways to have different and varied events up there, that's one of the things that I would prefer, to be able to have us prepare the facilities for all of our stuff. So, and we had talked about eventually trying to get to a bigger tractor and a lease, but it just hasn't happened.
And a big part of that discussion, we have Road and Bridge and Shanda right now working on, I want to know each vehicle in every department, where we're at and where our goal is. We need to have that here really quick if we're going to talk about each department and what direction we want to go. So we have a plan instead of each going different directions with each department. So I'd really like to move that up as quick as we can and have that conversation.
If we could have that for the parks recommendation, that gives us more time when trying to find funding versus when we're down to the crunch,
Right.
finishing up the commission.
I think that there should be some criteria. We've been leasing long enough, and we should know what direction we want to go in each department and what is the best. I mean, like I say, we have a vehicle we've had for 4 years that
8,000 miles.
the purchase probably wouldn't be bad.
Yeah.
And then there's other departments that we can move vehicles from department to department as one starts getting miles and one isn't. I think that we just need to work on that policy, and that it's not all budget, but it's part of the overall plan.
Right.
I know we had talked a little bit about like the water truck being an issue for me, and I'm pretty sure the water truck's a 1985. I like it, but it's just beat. I mean, it's just a beat up truck. Before we kind of would get those hand-me-downs through Road and Bridge, and I think hand-me-downs in some instances, like the water truck, is the best option for the county. I don't like. They could give me their worst water truck and it's 10 years newer than ours, you know? And so I know as we look at trying to find ways to, if we continue to hang on to that water truck, it's just going to continue to cost us more and more money. And I just don't know. The problem we have is the reliability. We have big events that generate a pretty good chunk of revenue for us that we have to have that thing up and going.
Yeah, we had rain this year, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah, we did run into an issue this year where the starter's gone out on that water
Yeah.
truck. And at the same time Road and Bridge was doing their mag stuff, we're stuck. We did not have an option for a replacement water truck. It's either rent one or park on a hill and push start it. And that's what we've done. We've jumped it. That's how we're still running it right now, is we park on a hill with a truck full of water and we back it up and pop start it.
And we have another facility in Downey that actually needs a water truck there. The system they have right now is very, very poor. So, but them are some big discussions I think that we need to have.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I have for this budget, and I've kind of outlined my general needs. I think we do our best to try to manage the funds that we're given.
83.
Questions, concerns before we move off that one?
No.
Okay. Now to the more tricky budget is our event budget, and this is a really interesting one because we will have revenue coming in and revenue going out, or money going out all year, and you know we try to calculate the expenses for every show that we're going to run, and those expenses scale with the show, right? And so like Initially we said we want to plan on spending about $1 million on concerts, right? And so if I do $1 million on concert buys, then you can add on to each concert we run anywhere from $40,000 to $75,000 in actual expenses that are going to come along with that show, and that doesn't include your concessions costs or revenue generated. So it becomes a kind of a tricky one. This is really more about how much we think we're going to spend, if I understand correctly, than necessarily how much will be funded by the county. It's more just how much we think we're going to spend out of this line.
Authority.
Yeah, we need budget authority. And so, like, this year we run 2 concerts. We have a 3rd concert this week, a 4th within, 10 days, and then a 5th in August. I think things are going pretty well with our shows. When we're all said and done, it'll be great to see what everything kind of comes out, how everything kind of comes out in the wash. But I think that putting a limit on our buys at a year to say, and I'm just going to use the example of $1 million is kind of crazy. That's the way I feel today. I feel like it's crazy, right? Because if I had the opportunity to go buy a band that I knew was going to just have a monster turnaround for us, but it was going to cost $500,000, it's kind of a crazy thing to not be able to jump at something like that, because we said we were going to, this is where it's going to sit at. Now, typically, we want to start buying concerts for next year right now. We want to start putting some money down on some concerts for next year. The way that a show runs typically is about 60 days out. We got to give them half of the first half of the guarantee, and then the second half is due day of the show. And so, if we had a concert that cost us $200,000, we'd give them $100,000 usually 60 days out. The other $100,000 is going to be day of the show, plus any back-end splits that we have on overages. And so those overages can kind of are again, we don't even know necessarily what those overages are going to be until day of the show. And so that's a whole other issue. But by the time the show is over, if we've recouped that money and we're good to go, then that should help fund every future show, because our shows are typically 2 or 3 months apart, and this is not necessarily it's not like spending money without having money, but I definitely feel like if the opportunity came up for us to get a decent act and we needed to jump on it, I think that we should have that ability. I guess that's all I'm saying.
Well, this is an enterprise fund, so a couple things we need to do. We need to add an admin fee, which might be a little tricky because that's usually set at 5% of the budget. But that's going to contradict what I'm saying next, is that in order to give the flexibility of concerts, we can increase that amount to whatever we think might be realistic. It's just going to be offset with revenue. So we could budget that at $3 million, and then we would just offset that with concert revenue of $3 million. If you don't use it, then you're not going to bring the money in, but it would still give you that budget authority to be able to spend the money and have the flexibility. So we can increase that on what we think you might need. You've spent $980,000 to date, but that doesn't include I don't think we've paid anything on Clay Walker or Chris Young. We've done
half on
down
Chris Young,
payment.
yeah.
But
So going a little slower for me here. So, like right now, we've spent just under $1 million. We budgeted $1 million. So the monies that he's bringing in, now we can go back and use those.
if we've exceeded revenue estimates, yes, we can. We can open the budget to give you more budget authority for this year.
So that's what we'd have to do, is open the budget every time that happens.
So we could do that for this year, but then what I'm proposing we do for next year is we budget higher,
Okay.
and then that way he can only spend, obviously, what we're gonna receive in. So if you end up only needing $2 million, we're obviously not gonna spend $3 million because he won't have the revenue to offset it. So the buys will normally match the ticket sales that we get in.
So, and that's what I was trying to clarify it. So if we do the 3 million, not saying that the money's there all the time, but,
Right.
but
It'll allow
it can
the-
come back, and we don't have to open the budget because we've gone at a higher.
Unless he decides to get a lot more big concerts and we need $4 million, then we would open the budget. But, but if we put it at a better amount based on, we've got 1 year, almost 1 year under our belt. We didn't know what we were doing last year and didn't know how much we would need. So it was a swag. Right now, we can increase that amount and just give you that extra authority.
Do you have the breakdown of, because I got us spending way less than you do. And I don't know, that's why I gotta see what we have as far as what we've committed to, because you said we spent nearly 980,000 to this point.
I have 980 been spent out of your concert line.
Yeah, I definitely, I would like to see what that is.
And we can work on fine tuning this and then just bring that back to the board when we do the clerk's recommendation with the justification of why we're doing what we're doing.
And I'd just like to say, I appreciate the way you've all worked. This has been a trial and error, and I thank everybody that has worked so hard to make this successful, and I think that we've been successful. So thank you all for all your work.
I agree.
Well, when we have open communication, that's budget, by the way, sorry.
No, you're good.
We've
Okay.
got really good open lines of communication, which has allowed for us to be able to roll with almost anything. Scott and I are meeting almost weekly. Well, I shouldn't say Scott and I. We're meeting almost weekly to run through little things here and there, and if something pops up, they call me right away, and it allows us to know and react, as opposed to it becoming an emergency and then trying to react after the fact. So it's been good both ways.
Thank you very much, all of you.
And with the number of concerts we've bought this year, we actually should come in below what we had originally projected for that concert, or that concert.
Yeah,
Just
sorry,
because.
that was a budget of 980.
Yeah, so the
Sorry.
budget was 980 was what we budgeted for last year, but the thing that's kind of crazy is we've brought in sponsorship money. We've used sponsorship money to make some upgrades on the facility, and to offset a lot of the costs, which, and I know we've talked about like a 5-year plan, so I don't have my official 5-year plan to give you guys, but just the way I would love to use my 5-year plan over the next few years is the first couple of years I want to do the same thing, where I use sponsorship money to really enhance the experience for the people that come. And then probably year 3, I want to flip it and use sponsorship money to buy better shows.
Last year, you were allotted $1 million to buy concerts.
Yeah.
This year, you want to allot $3 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's.
So now,
So we
these
can just use
suggestions
the
I keep
funds.
making, we're probably going to get these concerts, right?
I don't know. I don't know. I would say,
That's-
and I will tell you.
That's just a joke.
I know.
Just a joke.
I would tell you, I would love to get some of the concerts. Like he mentioned, I think it was Morgan Wallen was one of them, right? Morgan Wallen was one of them.
No, I was like Guns N' Roses. and stuff.
Oh, geez, I love that Guns N' Roses.
We had Guns N' Roses
The-
a year ago.
I would love to be able to
Michael's film.
to bring in some bigger bands. I think
Wasn't
that
Guns N' Roses guy?
that's Poison.
Oh, okay.
Poison's lead singer.
See how up I am.
Yeah.
On the record.
Yeah, right. The concert, it's kind of hard to explain like a value a person has. There's an artist that came to our venue 2 years ago. The buy was $5,000 as an opener. This year, we couldn't touch her for $50,000, and I think next year she's going to be worth $500,000. And that doesn't happen a ton. I mean, but that happens, and so, we may get somebody that is an opener just starts sparking, and then, a couple years down the road, I've seen this now in the last 2 years, that just some bands hit and just fly, and some of them, like, we went to a Jelly Roll show last year to kind of look at Jelly Roll. We could have brought him here last year. he would have sold the place out, we will not be able to afford him ever again. He went through the roof. His cost, easily 10 to 12 times what it was last year.
What ever happened to that hairball or whatever? Didn't we already pay them?
We did, we paid them half down, and we talked to them this year. They were booked out through this year, and so they said they would look at getting us on the schedule for next year. So we're hoping to get them lined out. So I think that part of the $3 million budget for the concerts also includes concessions, because again, depending on how big we estimate the show is, our goal at $20 per person in concessions is a pretty decent goal, as long as we're serving beer and food. If we ever choose to go to hard liquor, that could nearly double the numbers show. But you start making some pretty crazy dollars when you go to hard liquor. But obviously, if we've done a 2,500 person concert, and I think we did a pretty good job of that one. We've done a 6,000 person concert this year. I think we did a pretty good job. I'd love to see if we could do a 10,000 person concert and what that would look like. That would be a lot of cash that I would feel super nervous about. But yeah.
Your staff, they're just ready for it.
They do a great job. I mean, these guys both locked in a little teeny closet up there somewhere in an anonymous location. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy when you do the logistics of it.
So right now we've got, do you think the extra help line of 48,000 is going to be enough based on what we're doing right now? So we probably need to relook at that.
Yeah, I think we need to look at that too.
So we probably have a little bit of more work to do on the Bannock County Events Fund.
We also looked at, and this is a procurement issue, but I think that, and I don't know how we feel about like multi-year contracts for some of our folks. I know that we could get a pretty decent discount on production going to a multi-year deal, and then we could also get a really good, pretty decent discount on fireworks if we went to a multi-year.
So we've also
RFP.
got built within here, the 4th of July is 150,000. The budget you guys have before you for this current year, we put down to just under 125,000, right?
And I would like to just keep that as one of our events in the events line.
It
Not
is.
even give it its own separate line, just leave it as one of our events where we have the ability to be a little more.
So for this budget, we need to have transparency, so that's why we've got it broken out into concerts, 4th of July, and then you'll have your travel and education, and then concessions is its own, and then contract services and property acquisitions. But we need to be able to show the revenue and the expenses. So that's why we've got the expenses as concessions, the revenue as expenses, so that we can net those. Right now, we're breaking out the concerts by projects. So we're setting up a project for each concert so that we can track what the expenses are. We do have some expenses that we're working through this year, like the marketing, some items like that. It's hard to pinpoint how much is truly for one concert when you're promoting all of them. So those are some things we're going to work out at the end of season so that we can better report profit and losses for you. But those items we're kind of more charging in operating, since you can't necessarily pinpoint the specific event.
And one of the things that I know that we need to do moving forward is try to find a way to reduce our expenses for the shows. And one of the ways to do that is to start buying some of the, like the Mojo barriers, right? The Mojo barriers, we pay to rent those. Maybe a couple of lighting trusses, maybe a couple of motors that we could maintain that kind of stuff. Not a full stage setup, but some general stage equipment that we could use. That would be a good way to try to offset some of our expenses.
Is that what you got built into this 250 property acquisitions?
Initially, yeah, that's what it was. That's what we had talked about doing. And I mean, if we wanted to, yeah,
Some of those barriers you could buy and actually rent out, depending on the event. We could include that as part of races or something like that that would help.
yeah.
And we need to have a conversation about the 4th of July and what direction we really want to go and where it needs to go. Whether we need to invest more into it and make it a bigger event or scale it back and make it a fireworks show. I think that that's a serious discussion that we need to have along these lines also. Like out in Ingham, all they're having is a parade this year. They're not having any activities down at the park, they're not having their breakfast, they're not having any of those things, can't get any volunteers.
Well, at this point, the 4th of July has all been either sponsors or revenue coming in to offset that cost, which is why it's in this fund. So it's really not supplemented. It may end up partially being supplemented this year, just simply because one of our last meetings, we talked about how sponsorships, we need to almost do a blanket sponsorship to cover concerts and also 4th of July, because we've been trying to make the concert successful. So the sponsorship money has been focused a little bit more there.
And some of our sponsors really do want to be involved in both sides, and they already are, right? Like ICCU is a big sponsor with the concerts, but they're also bringing the drones back this year for us. So, and Port Enough Medical sponsors both sides. So Toyota sponsors both sides.
And I think that's the big part of the big conversation we got to have, because you can't go ask somebody for, $100,000 here and then go back and say, well, we want $10,000 here for this other deal.
Yeah.
No, it needs,
Yeah.
when we go to these big sponsors, we got to have our ducks all in a row, so we know what we're talking about at the one time.
And I do
know
feel
that
like
they
that's
can
something that
advertise.
we've learned and we're growing through too, is just how sponsorship works and what we can do to best serve those folks. The one thing that we've talked a little about this year is kind of including, because we have last year, and from what I understand, there's only been 1 or 2 years we haven't had a live band perform up on the field. Sometimes it's been as simple as putting a trailer up there and then having them get up on the trailer. Last year, I think we had a stage set up. This year we'll have a stage set up. And this year we're trying to get a couple different bands that will be up there. And then we'll run it like a concert where the people that are our sponsors will actually have access to a VIP area that's part of the 4th of July as well. And so it's a good marketing tool for us. I mean, we're going to have a lot of people up there. We might as well talk to them.
Well, it's a great event, but I think that we need to decide what we want to do now with it. Yeah. But it's a lot of time, a lot of responsibility for you and your crew, and a big day.
You guys got any other questions for me? I know we could talk crazy stuff. I wish I had more concrete answers as far as like concerts and some projections and stuff, but I definitely feel like in the next couple of years we should have a much better idea there.
I think for the first year going through this, and now we'll go through the second year of the budget, I think that we're right where we need to be. Like I say, you offices have worked it out to make it successful, and so we're still going to rely on your expertise.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
It's all good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.